Los mandatos informales. We're going to be looking at command forms, informal command forms. And actually, I'm going to be talking about formal ones as well. So we'll be looking at this in your book and also a file that I'll be sending you, which is this one. Okay, the first thing you need to learn about is informal commands. And for the affirmative form, the affirmative tu command, you're going to be using a command form that looks just like él, ella, usted in the present. So if you tell somebody to fill the tank, you're going to say llena el tanque. The person you're thinking about is tú, but that actually looks like usted. Okay, wait a minute, what's going on? Alright, so here in my chart, I have the tu affirmative form. Okay, notice that you have A, E, E. That's how I want you to memorize it. A, E, E. Tu affirmative looks exactly like usted, third person present. There's another word here that you might not be sure about. Affirmative. Okay, you've probably heard that in the movies or something. Affirmative, Roger, affirmative, Roger, okay, so that kind of thing, affirmative. And another word that we use in grammar is negative. So why don't we use positive and negative? Well, we use affirmative because not everything that we say that's affirmative we would want to call positive. For example, mi cachorro está enfermo. Aw, my puppy dog is sick. That's an affirmative statement. I wouldn't call that positive. Okay. Negative. Mi cachorro no está enfermo. Wait a minute, why is that negative? That sounds like it's a good thing. So in grammar, negative just means that there's a no. Affirmative means that there's no. Okay? So when you have a tu command that's affirmative, that means that if you look at the sentence, there's no. If you have a negative tu command, you're going to find a no. Okay? So back to this one. We have two affirmative commands, and the endings are for AR verbs, ER verbs, IR verbs, A, E, E. Memorize them in that order. Okay? Now for the two negative commands, notice that there's no. We're going to do something different. Okay, this is what they call in math an outlier. Okay, sorry, actually, this first form that we just saw is the outlier. This one's going to follow a different pattern. This one's going to follow the pattern of A, E, E. Okay, and actually, we'll come back to this in a minute. Okay, so to form the negative tu command, okay, you have to take the yo form of the present tense of the verb, drop the o ending, add es for AR verbs, and add as for ER, IR verbs. Let's go back to this. Okay, so notice up here there is no S. No S, the outlier. This is weird, and it's A, E, E. But over here, notice that all these other verb forms, they follow a different pattern. E, A. Okay, That's why I went ahead and threw in nosotros for you. That's at no charge to you. And I threw in usted and ustedes. Usted and ustedes are in a different lesson, but it's in the same, these are in the same chapter. Really, you should be getting nosotros because even the name of the chapter is viajemos. You see that? That's nosotros. That's a nosotros command, but it's not even here yet. So, but I just went ahead and threw that in because it's so simple. All you do is follow the letters from here, from do negative on down. E, A, A. So then, yeah, how do we get there again? For these down here, not for the outliers. But from here on down, you start with yo, take off the o, and add the appropriate endings. You need to memorize the endings for AR verbs, and then ER, IR, the endings are gonna be the same. See that? AS, AS, amos, amos, an. Okay? So you take off the O, and then you add the ending, and then you have no hables. Hablemos, hable, hablen. And then you think, well, Ricardo, that's dumb, because I could have just taken off AR there, and I would have gotten the exact same thing. Well, for this one, yes. For comer, yes, you would have gotten the exact same thing. Okay, remember you're starting from here on down. But from conducir, oh no, this one is different. Conduzcas, no conduzcas. Well, gee, how do you get there? You have to think of the yo form first. Conduzco. You take off the O, and then you're left with this little irregular bit, the Z. Okay. Notice that's reproduced everywhere. Okay, so I could give you another irregular verb like seguir, and you would have to do the same process as listed right here. Okay, you start with yo sigo, take off the o, and then the endings would be sigas, sigamos, siga, sigan. Okay, so this is a very important rule to start with yo first. First think about yo, take off the o, and then add the endings. Okay, let's look at this again. Okay, these words have some spelling changes. The ones that end, the verbs that end in car, gar, zar, and it looks like it only affects the negative do commands, because if you keep this C here, it won't be pronounced like a hard C anymore. Saco, saco, sacar, that's a hard C or a K sound. If you leave a C there, it's going to be nos haces, and that doesn't sound right. No yejes, no yejes, that's wrong. Okay, so for these two, there's a question here of pronunciation. The pronunciation will change if you don't change these letters. For this one, this is like before when we had lápiz, you remember? We don't like to have something like this in Spanish. We don't like to write ZES. We prefer to write CE. Okay, CES. So that's the simple reason why empieces, actually that would be no empieces, doesn't have a Z. This comes from empezar, which has a Z. We don't like to have ZE together, so we change that to C. Okay, these are for pronunciation again. Okay, and let's see, we'll come back to that in a minute. So here are some common verbs that have irregular affirmative do commands. I've also put them on my file. Okay, and here they are. Okay, well, I organized them a little bit differently, and maybe this will help you memorize them better. Poner, salir. Pon sal. That, if you look at these two words alone, okay, and you forget about what this really means, pon sal means put salt. So that might help you remember something. Maybe you put salt on your fries. Pon sal papas fritas is one strategy you could use to remember that. Di, as. Do you all know Cameron Diaz? I think you do. Okay, decir, hacer, you can think di, as, and Cameron Diaz to help you remember how these are spelled. Then these are very similar. Ben, ten. So I put them one right after the other. Venir, tener. And then these irregular do command forms. Se, be. Similar spellings, except that notice ser is going to have an accent there. This looks also like saber. Saber is maybe the only yo present form verb that ends with e and an accent. It looks exactly the same, but you'll know which one it is by context. And notice again that these are only for the affirmative. Okay, their other forms, tú, negative, usted, nosotros, ustedes, are regular. Regular in the sense that you can follow this rule here. Okay, so again, another instance of where tú affirmative is an outlier. In this case, it has completely irregular tú command forms. Okay, these commands are completely irregular. You cannot predict what the different command forms of these verbs will be. Just by looking at id, there's no way you can guess that there's going to be a V right there. Okay. Now, even though I said that, this is tú affirmative, tú negative, you can still look at this and then remember the pattern. No vayas, usted vaya, vayamos, vayan. Okay. Those all actually look very similar. You should know that most do forms in Spanish have S at the end, and every nosotros form has a MOS. Every ustedes form has an N. Okay, that you should know, right? And so this is going to be really still kind of the outlier, a little bit different. Okay, no S at the end. Ser, we already saw the affirmative command for these two, but I put it there again. And then same thing as over here, you can figure out the pattern once you know one of these. Seas, sea, seamos, sean. And then dar, you have da for two affirmative. And then you have des, no des, de, demos, den. For all of these, you have one form of de there. Okay, so even then you can memorize a sort of pattern. This has an accent, so watch out for that. The only reason we put an accent is so that we don't confuse that with de, as in ¿de dónde es tu papá? Yo soy de California. That's why we put an accent there, so we don't get confused. Okay. Now we have this next section. We have reflexive pronouns, object pronouns that can be added to the end of the command forms when they are affirmative. Se me pinchó una llanta. I got flat tire. Cámbiamela. Change it for me. My wife would never say that. Okay. Cámbiamela. Change it for me. We've had the same order before, where we have indirect object pronoun and direct object pronoun. We've done those before, double object pronouns. Now you just keep them together and add them to the end of the command form. That's the only choice you have, to put it at the end. Here we have a direct object pronoun at the end. Indirect and direct, okay, at the end. Duérmete, this is a reflexive form right now. Dormirse, dormirse is to fall asleep. You're telling someone to fall asleep. Okay, duérmete, and this is, yeah, don't get confused here. Duerme, okay, that's not a me there, like one of these. Okay, that's from dormir, duerme, and then te is a reflexive command. Reflexive pronoun. Okay, then when we have negative commands, negative do commands, first we put no, and then we put the indirect and direct objects before the verb. Okay, or here that's a direct object before the verb, indirect, direct before the verb, and then don't fall asleep. Here we put the reflexive pronoun before the verb. Okay, so I gave you a couple of examples there, okay, for how to do this, and I told you like which ones are right, which ones are wrong. Okay, and one more thing. Oh yeah, well, just go straight to the formal commands. Okay, and again, this follows the same rule as over here. Okay, because for all of these, do negative on down, you follow the same rule. Okay, so there's really nothing different to learn here form wise. And okay, oh yeah, for here, for these usted commands, you still have to follow these spelling changes that were on the last page. Okay, and there's some irregular forms here for ustedes commands. I didn't put those on the list, but I'll go ahead and put them. I mean, some of these are actually, these first three are on that list already, but I'll go ahead and put it like it's in the book and add it to that list and email that to you. And then here, make sure you compare these and that you're able to explain the differences.